Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Life University's Black History Month panel discussion on Beyond Adversity, Building Black Resilience Through Self-Care and Community. I am Dr. Harrison Davis, Life University's Chief Diversity Officer. It is my honor to kick off this crucial conversation that explores the heart of mental health, self-care, and community within the Black experience. Black History Month is a time of just not reflection, but action. We celebrate past achievements of Black leaders and pioneers, but we also acknowledge the ongoing challenges faced by Black communities today. One critical area demanding our attention is mental health. Statistics show that Black Americans disproportionately face mental health disparities due to historical and systemic factors. Yet, the narrative of Black resilience shines brightly even in the middle of adversity. This panel discussion aims to empower us to all navigate these challenges and build pathways toward collective healing. Joining us today are three expert panelists who bring exceptional expertise and diverse perspectives to this conversation. One panelist is going to join us a little bit later. He had a family issue that he had to address, but he indicated he's going to join us after we start. So let me first start with Dr. Kiki Ramsey, is a positive psychologist and executive coach, as well as a professor in the Masters of Positive Psychology program here at Life University. She is also the founder and CEO of Positive Psychology Coaching and Diversity Institute. Welcome to the call. Marius Haynes is an associate professional counselor. His clinical work includes roles in youth counseling, general life skills building, and other various experiences in the field of mental health. He currently works as a licensed therapist at Growth and Guidance Counseling, serving the clients of Georgia, as well as an EAP counselor for Optum United Health Group. And finally, we're going to have Lamar Lewis, who is also an associate professional counselor with over 20 years of experience as a therapist, consultant, and facilitator and trainer. With a focus on community-based mental health and public health, he works with diverse groups, including individuals living with psychiatric disabilities, people in recovery, and substance abuse, and youth at risk, or he calls it at hope risk. He doesn't like to call anyone at risk. I want to welcome all of you guys to the show. And there's Lamar. How are you doing, Lamar? Glad you're here. So my first question I want to throw out to the panel, and you can talk a little bit about yourself. What inspired you to focus some of your clinical work on supporting the mental health and wellness within the Black American community? And how do you believe your expertise can make a difference in people's lives? Let's start with you, Dr. Ramsey. What inspired you to work with Black folks with wellness and mental health?
Absolutely. Well, for me, I started with my mom a long time ago. My mom was actually addicted to crack cocaine, and I grew up sleeping on a couch in a crack house. And so as I grew up, it was a very, very difficult way to be raised. And I wanted to be able to help her navigate her addiction. And so she was my first, would you say, client, although she was my mom. And she since passed of pancreatic cancer about 15 years ago. But that sparked just a love for pouring into women, especially African American women, because I feel like we have so much to give, and there's so many barriers in our way to getting to where we want to go. And so it was born out of that. I started my company the year that she passed away, and I haven't stopped since.
Very good. How do you believe your expertise can make a difference in people's lives?
Well, I'm a positive psychologist and an executive coach. I actually got my master's of positive psychology from Life University, and I am blessed to actually be a professor in that very same program. And so I look at people from a strengths-based perspective. Every last one of us have strengths, and we all were born for a purpose. And so I am able to tap into those strengths of people and motivate them and empower them to be able to be more resilient so that they can become come and do the things that they want. So I feel like my positive slant on things, I'm that person who sees the glass half full versus half empty.
Gotcha.
And I'm the person who's always going to look on the bright side of things and let you know that you are strong and you are capable. So I feel like the positive psychology background that I have, plus the coaching, is an excellent tool for me to be able to empower and help people all over to be able to take it to the next level of where they want to be.
Thank you so much. And Marius, tell us about what sparked you to put some focus into the mental health and wellness of the Black community. You're mute.
Sorry about that. So for me, um, I was my own motivator, coming up, with various childhood challenges, whether it be, not having a father there or being in an environment that I wasn't comfortable with. I grew up around, I say 70% Caucasian, 30% or less African American. So there were a lot of feelings that were unresolved. So by the time I became an adult, there was a lot to work through, and working through the depression, the anxiety, the social anxiety. I needed someone to talk to. I needed someone to help me, help pull these feelings out so that they could be expressed and dealt with. And so that is what motivated me to dig a little bit deeper into the psychology of, what we deal with. So I actually minored in African American studies when I majored in psychology at the University of Mississippi. And I learned a lot, in that few years, that helped connect the dots between my story and my profession.
Gotcha. And how do you believe your expertise can make a difference with others?
Well, again, that experience, living through it, gives a certain level of transparency that I can provide to the clients, to let them know that they're not alone. Being able to relate to them on what they're going through a lot of times can build trust, not only with you as the professional, but also the field as a whole. So it helps to connect in order to bring people into counseling.
Thank you so much, Marius. Lamar Lewis, welcome to the call. Glad you're here, brother. Let me ask you, what
Likewise.
sparked your interest to do clinical work with the Black community?
Oh man, very, very long answer to a short question. When I was first I'm a preacher's kid. But I don't have a relationship with my biological father, and that plays a large role into this. When I was going through my initial development, I wasn't able to. I was going through a lot of emotional stuff right around that middle school age that you really need that support. And growing up, I grew up, there wasn't a lot of it. It was pretty much go back to church, and that has its place. However, I do believe our Creator, God, the universe, whatever people want to call it, um, endows amongst all of us certain skills and gifts, and one of those is counseling and therapy and psychology and being able to heal emotional and mental wounds, but dare I say spiritual wounds as well. So during that time, I didn't have anybody. And fast forward when I was about 18, 19, my mentor, Dr. Boyka Selassie Tway, he's an African psychologist out of Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio, where I'm from. Um, he grabbed me up, chose to mentor me. This is around the time where it got really violent in my hometown. So a lot of my friends were getting killed. And I wanted to do something. And all I knew how to do was help. So we started working with other young people, teaching them leadership skills and stuff like that. And that kind of started me on my journey
Gotcha.
to where I am now. Yeah. So that's it could go longer, good brother. That's about
Well,
it.
that's great information right there, because I'm hearing some
Yeah,
themes from all three of you and
sure.
your desire to help and save people.
Mm.
But Lamar, I also want to ask you the second part to that question. How do you
Yes, sir.
believe you can help?
Uh, and I'm not saying this to be arrogant. I already do. You know what I'm saying? I believe that one of the things I've been mentored to do is to give back. And so I don't know anything else. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to use our gifts once we get where we all of us went through some turmoil, it sounds like. And I'm sure the people on this call who will listen to this later been through something. And it's our charge to, once we grow up Sankofa, we reach back. So this is just part of who I am.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. No
So
problem.
I want to start off, we're going to talk about Black folks today. it's Black History Month. I believe everybody needs adequate self-care, mental health resources. For today, we're going to talk about us in the Black community. And there are a number of issues out there. And I just want to jump right into one of the issues, some of the things that you guys have seen or that you've noticed. So I just want to throw it out there. What are you seeing with your Black clients or the people you working with, or even your work in the community as far as wellness and mental health? What are you observing? What are some of those themes that you see? Before we jump into talking about how we can help, we're going to have to identify and recognize what's going on. Let me start with you, Dr. Ramsey. What are you seeing out there with your Black clients and working in the community?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work in organizations, and I see a lot of Black clients who are in relatively high places that are burnout and
Exhausted.
exhausted, right?
Yep.
And I can feel their pain because
I
I'm
talk to them
working
too.
alongside of them. But there seems to be, we're even more exhausted than maybe our white counterparts, because inherently, I think a lot of Black people feel the need to have to do better, right? We have
Yeah.
to be 100% better than our counterparts. And that is something I think that has been ingrained in us over the history of just slavery and all the things that we do. So just for us to be on the same level, we have to be better. We have to have a PhD. We have to work harder. We have to show it. And when we don't show it, or when we're not working hard, then there's something wrong with us. We're slacking. We get less than stellar performance evaluations. And so I'm seeing a lot of that going on in organizations. And the flip side of that, it's hard for Black people to take time off because we feel that way. Because
Obligation.
we feel that obligation. So therefore, if I feel that obligation to be my very best all the time, then I don't take time off, because then I will be seen as weak or not doing my job. And it's interesting because when I'm coaching VP level CEOs of these organizations, it is very hard for me to impart upon them that they need to take time off. They inherently know that they need to do it, but the doing of it is the hard part. And so I have this thing that I do with my clients. I will sit on the phone with them and I say, okay, I want you to take one whole day off this month. It's not for work, it's for you. And I will make them go to their calendar and actually schedule the day off. And it's the hardest thing to do. And I'm like, listen, it's 8 hours. Come on, right? But it is so difficult for them to do, because it just goes deeper than just taking a day off. What does this then say about me and my performance? Is my job going to be in jeopardy because of that? And I hate to see it, but that's what's happening. That's what I see happening, especially in corporate America.
So thank you for that perspective. Hear you talking about the group of Black folks, more professionals in managerial or administrative positions. And there's this drive, this obligation to demonstrate good, hard work ethic. And it sounds like there is some fear that if they don't outperform some expectations, that they're going to receive a bad review or some poor perceptions of who they are. And that causes a lot of emotional and spiritual exhaustion and physical exhaustion as well. But these individuals are driven to do that. So thank you. Yes, I have talked to those clients. They are burnt out and they are exhausted. And some of them hate their job and they can't get out of that lifestyle. So thank you for bringing that perspective up. I really appreciate that. We're going to come back to it. But Marius, what are you seeing out there as themes with some of the Black folks you're talking to?
I'm seeing two main things. One of them is avoidance. Either not knowing how to address the problem or not wanting to address the problem because it's too painful. It takes too much energy away from what Dr. Ramsey was saying, that performance, or it's just too grand. So I see a lot of avoidance, but I also see in that avoidance a lot of unhealthy coping skills, whether it be substance abuse
Wow.
or addictions to other things, or finding yourself in places you may not need to be, or around people you may not need to be around, or, just distractions, if you will, because that feels better than addressing the issue. So those are some of the things that I have seen the most.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing, like other folks, other individuals, Black folks, we are sometimes overwhelmed or even hurt by some type of situation. But what I'm hearing from you, Marius, is that sometimes there's this inability to confront it, and try to
Right.
address it and resolve the problem. And in that avoidance, that causes other symptoms. And there you talked
Absolutely.
about the distractions, poor decision making, and putting themselves into precarious situations, all in an effort to forget about that thing that they need to address. Would that be a fair statement? Thank you.
Absolutely. 100%.
So some conflict resolution skills may
Hmm.
be important. So Lamar Lewis, tell us what are you seeing out there with some of your Black clients and in the community?
Absolutely. And I got ADHD, so I had to take some notes. So I got like 4 different bullet points real quick.
That's fine.
Um, and no, and I share that because that's one of the things I want to touch on is this kind of suffering in silence
Ah,
with various issues and things like that. Like I didn't find out I had ADHD until I was, in my late 30s. And so struggling through life with all the different markers that we all see with the people and the kids that we work with, the inattentiveness, the executive functioning issues, all that kind of stuff. Um, did well despite all of that, but how much more could have been achieved at an earlier stage had I not had to wrestle with some of that.
yeah.
And
It's
so one of the things,
undiagnosed.
yeah, that's a whole that's a whole other hour if we had a chance to get into it. Well, one thing I would say, I work a lot with Black men, and I see a lot of issues with a lack of emotional support, and or burdening their emotional support on their significant others, or they just internalize that. Um, Another thing I see, I work with a lot of Black couples, and I see there's this power struggle taking
Mm,
place between
mm,
Black men and Black women. Whose role is what, and who's supposed to do what.
yep.
Our Black women are succeeding at exponential rates, and some
Yes.
Black men are still stuck in the 60s and can't get out of that, and they
Yep.
can't be a team. You know what I'm saying? They can't really collaborate. The last 2 things I'll mention are they kind of to me go hand in hand. Imposter syndrome, I see that a lot, along with survivor's guilt. So I've made it, right? I've done well, again, in spite of all my challenges, the environment I grew up in, and all that kind of stuff. But now I feel bad because I got family members and friends who didn't, and
Really?
or the
Okay.
yeah, or this imposter syndrome where I've made it, but somebody gonna find out I'm not as qualified or as talented as I project, and
Gotcha.
then it's all gonna crumble. So those are some of the themes that I see.
Thank you. Walking around in fear, and I want to highlight the issue you mentioned between Black couples. I know that has been a hot topic in recent years on other podcasts and viral videos, and some people have made themselves very popular talking about that. But there is a reality there that you just mentioned, and the power differential has certainly made a shift within heterosexual Black couples. As you mentioned, the Black women are doing extremely well. They know how to do it. They've been trained, perhaps raised by a single mom who ensured that her daughter will be able to take care of herself and not depend on a man. And women have a lot more vocational opportunities than they did 30 years ago. And then, like you said, the men, I share some concerns about generally Black men and our ability, to perform in that, to operate within that space as a team member and be the head of the household that they want to become. There are some few examples of that happening, but a lot of issues are contributing to some of those dynamics that are there. Thank you for sharing those because I wanted the audience to hear what you're seeing. That's just a part of the issues that are going on out there. Some of them pathological, some of them coping skills, and some of them real deep. that's affecting how Black people are coping in this world, and that transfers over to how they're into their relationships and how they're dealing with other people. So the next question I want to have, within the Black community now, we're obviously experiencing some issues just like other groups, but what are some of the misconceptions about mental health and wellness within the Black community, and how do they impact how we seek help? Let me ask you about that. What are some of the misconceptions, Marius, within the Black community about mental health and wellness?
Well, one, that it's ineffective. I've heard, from, people close to me, even family, friends, it doesn't work. Talking about it doesn't work. You
Skeptical.
just, yeah, a lot of skepticism, and not only that, but a lot of discouragement, because with that skepticism comes a whole idea of what counseling is, and that spreads throughout the family unit, the friend unit, or what have you. And now it's embarrassing for me to say if I need counseling or if I want to talk to somebody, because it's been shunned so much beforehand to where now it's embarrassing. And also that it's not confidential. We have had
Mm.
a lot of distrust in our history as African Americans, as Black people, throughout the decades and centuries. So to open up about personal things, is not taught in our households. We're taught to be very conservative about what we share because it
Yep.
could get us killed. So with that fear, that mentality, that carried on and carried throughout the generations, and now to open up your mouth and talk about what you're going through to a stranger
Mm.
is unheard of. So we're having to break that down, resolve it, and build some trust around the field.
Thank you. So some embarrassment and some fear. Lamar, what do
Mhm.
you believe are some of those misconceptions out there that's interfering with some Black folks seeking help?
I'm going to sum it up in 2 words. I'm going to break
Okay.
down mental health and wellness in 2 words. When I find a lot of people hear the terms mental health, they think crazy. Um, and nobody wants to be crazy. So nobody wants to talk about, like Marius already alluded to, various mental challenges that they may be facing, or emotional, or psychological challenges they may be facing. So, because I don't want to be called crazy, which is the stigma, which is what I'm alluding to. Um, they would prefer to engage in those maladaptive coping mechanisms, or just act like they don't exist or they don't impact their day-to-day living. The second word I would use when we talk about wellness is soft, right? A lot of people, and I know Dr. Ramsey knows this, we consider wellness a soft skill, something that you learn, right? It is not a hard skill, a technical skill. However, if I've taken care of myself, that's soft. I don't want to be soft. This is men and women. I've heard this wrong. I don't want to be soft, so I'm not going to take care of myself. I would
Mm.
prefer to,
Be
grind it out. I
hard,
sleep when I'm
tough.
dead. Yeah, exactly. I be the strong Black woman, strong Black man, et cetera, et cetera. And all those things I find play into. So again, crazy, soft. Crazy mental health is crazy. Soft is wellness.
Thank you for putting those terms. I appreciate that. I have heard that, I think, my entire life. I'm Black. I don't have time to hurt. I got bills to pay. I don't have time to be miserable, to address this depression, this anxiety, this growing worry. I have seen Black folks, with a family member may die, they go to the funeral. They don't even take a day off from work, maybe the day of the funeral, with this misconception that I need to be tough, and show everybody, particularly the family, that I am tough. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. That is part of our psyche. And I want to talk in a few minutes about where that possibly came from. But first, Kiki,
Yeah.
what are
Yeah.
what's these misconceptions that you're seeing or hearing within the Black community?
Definitely. I agree with Lamar. I had weak, right? You're weak if
Ah,
you go see a therapist, if you see a counselor, because we are made to be strong. Also, we don't tell people our business. We private.
yeah,
So people ain't, you don't go out there telling nobody your business because it ain't their business. And so we suffer in silence because
yeah,
we ain't supposed to tell nobody our business. And then it's that whole hustle culture, that hustle mentality, right? Like you said, Lamar, I sleep when I die,
yeah,
or I get up at 3 a.m. every morning,
I've heard
grind,
that.
grind,
Yeah.
grind. But what they don't tell you is they need to go to bed at 6 o'clock to get up. In order to survive and get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you need to go to bed at 6. Okay. But they're not telling you that part. And so we get this misconception about what it means to be successful. And because we want to be successful, that means we can't take the latitude to take care of ourselves, whether it be our mind or our bodies. We can't do that because otherwise we won't be successful. And I think that's a travesty that we have
Absolutely.
in our community.
And I hear you, and all three of you guys pointing out some issues contributing to wellness issues, emotional, mental health issues, and this hard work ethic and not talking to other individuals or just avoiding it, because I don't want to deal with it, So Marius, I want to ask you about a possible origin of this mindset that exists within the Black community. I think is real. I think it's prevalent. Not every Black person, but it is there. And I've heard the term, I want to make sure I say it correctly, and you can explain it. Correct me if you must. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I'm definitely not the expert. Lamar would most likely be more
Okay.
of an expert in that area
Okay.
than me. So I'm gonna slide it over to him because he's the one that actually taught me about it.
Thank you, brother. All right, Lamar, let me present that question to you. Tell us about post-traumatic slave syndrome.
For sure. Thank you, Marius, because we definitely worked through that in our master's program. So for sure. There's two things. I'm glad you said that. Post-traumatic slave disorder is essentially a theory by Dr. Joy, I pronounced her last name correctly, DeGray, that states that basically it's the intergenerational transfer of trauma. The
Gotcha.
trauma from our slave experience, from our ancestors, if we're, from here, we're all from the diaspora. Like I like to say, the boat dropped us off. They're all different places, but we all came from the same spot.
Caribbean was a pit stop.
Pit stop, Canada, Britain, we can run any, colonial power. We were there, right? And so I share that because when we talk about the intergenerational transfer of trauma, we're just simply stating that what in the church they call it generational curses, right?
Yes.
The stuff that doesn't get resolved per generation gets passed down. And now science is backing up that, okay, mothers can pass this trauma down in vitro to the babies and things of that nature. So it's simply just, to make it very, simple and plain, it's pretty much stating that, hey, what your ancestors went through never got resolved and it's been passed down. And some of this dysfunctional behavior, this maladaptive coping stems from that experience.
Gotcha. So that may explain, and I'll come to you in a second, Marius, that may explain what we were just talking about. I don't know any other groups who will work themselves to death, and encouraged, some of us as kids by our parents will encourage us, to do better. You have to do better, work hard, and it contributes to this mindset. I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to be tired, so that helps me to frame things well. Did you want to add something to that, Lamar?
I did. When you said work yourself to death, it gave me the other thing.
Sure.
There's a theory called John Henryism. And if you're familiar with who John Henry is in the story, coming up, I'm from Ohio. So where I'm from, I didn't hear the whole story. I just heard that he beat the train and that was it.
Yes.
I didn't know John Henry died after he beat the train. So there's a theory, I believe it's Dr. John Carter out of Duke University. He's a professor emeritus in sociology, discussed this concept of John Henryism, which basically means, like Maria stated earlier, and like Dr. Ramsey's already stated, and you alluded to, Dr. Davis, that working yourself, using your high work ethic and work capacity as a coping mechanism. So people are literally working themselves to death as a way to cope with life. So yeah,
because that was passed
that
down. Part of the theory, I'm assuming that was passed down from some of our ancestors who were encouraged to work hard in the fields or in the house as a slave, and possibly to avoid some type of negative consequence. And then generations later, people are still encouraging their kids to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Marius and Dr. Ramsey, do you want to add anything to finish up that topic on post-traumatic slave disorder?
you know, with post-traumatic slave disorder, it really brings about a lack of it. We experience that in the Black community, like as a lack of self-esteem, persistent feelings of anger, internalized racism
Yeah.
that is, you know, dealt to us. And a lot of times, I don't know, right? Because I haven't been doing practice in therapy in quite some time, but I wonder, as therapists, how do you identify that in us as Black people? Because I know a lot of us can present that way and we are triggered. And I know, Marius, we were talking off stage about like PTSD, and I think that it may show up that way for us as well. Like we get triggered by just some of the incidences that happen to us, and people can't understand why we are behaving the way that we behave or why we respond to a situation that we respond to. And it's partly because of this and these inherent things that have happened to even some of our ancestors that we internalize. And we might not even understand that this is where it's coming from, but there is a reason. And there, you know, and I think as a Black community, if we never go and get help, we never learn how to understand ourselves. And we never learn sometimes how to get better or how to cope in a very productive way with the feelings that we're having, because we are too scared to get help.
Absolutely. Thank you. Marius, you want to add anything
Yeah.
to top off that discussion?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is on point with what they're saying. You know, I think the root of a lot of what we go through comes from that, because I've noticed that a lot of times we have anxiety, we have symptoms of PTSD without a trigger.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking or going into genetic memory and genetic predispositions biologically. You know, if you can be born with a predisposition to diabetes or have, you know, a dominant gene of brown eyes or brown hair, why can't you inherit the genes of trauma,
Wow.
anxiety, depression, you know, all of these different things? So I think that presents a level or a layer rather of stuff that we have to deal with on top of what we're actually physically dealing with in this lifetime. So that combined with all of, because I myself have experienced that. For instance, when you're driving down the road, that feeling inside of you when you see the blue lights, whether or not you have been pulled over or been, you know, slammed to the ground or harassed or abused by a police officer,
Or
there's a
watched it
level
on
of
TV.
fear. Yeah, there's a level of fear that it lives inside of you when you see images like that. And you know, it's perpetuated in the way that we are treated still to this day. So it's not only something that we've pulled into the lifetime that we're in, but now we're having to see it perpetuated over and over again. It's a re-traumatization, and it's really, really unhealthy. But that promotes, you know, that whole resilience thing. Okay, you're dealing with this as a people, you're dealing with this as a community, but you need to keep going
Yeah.
because we need you as the nurse, we need you as the doctor, we need you as the, you know, support worker, we need you as the counselor. So you still have to keep going, even though you're dealing with all of this.
Thank you. That is wonderful statements. I learned some things. So, Dr. Ramsey, I want to ask you, we're going to shift over to talk about resilience a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about the beauty and the sharp edges of resilience.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, the definition of resilience is your ability to bounce back from difficult and challenging situations quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's resilience, right? Our ability to bounce back from those challenges quickly. The beauty is that we're able to do it.
And we do it every day.
Right. We do it every single day. I mean, we on a day-to-day basis, I just understand living while Black, you consistently have challenges that other people may not face. And it is very hard for other people to understand those challenges because a lot of us live an intersection of something. I'm a Black woman, and you all are Black men. And we live in that intersection between both and trying to figure out how to manage in this world. So when a challenge happens to us, whether it be a professional or personal life, we have to bounce back most of the time. And when we don't, we suffer greatly, even more than our counterparts, right? I've seen, just different situations in the workplace where if it happened to a white person versus a black person, they back on their feet, right? They back on their feet, but we're not. And we're not giving those second chances like other people are given. So we don't even have the latitude to not bounce back quickly when it comes to some situations in our life. Like we have to, in order to be able to feed our families and keep a roof over our house, over ourselves, right? And so I think that is a beautiful thing that we are able to do it because it has become a necessary for us. But on the flip side of that, having to do that causes more trauma.
Yeah.
Causes us to not be able to even function. Like I know so many people who I may coach who you look one way, you're all pristine at work, but you go home and you crying and you are upset. A whole microaggression happened to you at work, and there's not a dang thing that you can say about it, because if you do, then you're fearful that you're going to lose your job. So what you need to do is straighten up, get your face together, because you can't look like it even happened to you, because if you are, then you're an angry Black woman, right? So it's all these things that are happening to us that we can't even process. We have to be resilient to bounce back, but it's causing more trauma. And then we have all these misconceptions about what it means to get help.
Yep.
And so we're just internalizing all this hurt and pain. And then somebody is to suffer. A lot of times it's our bodies. We end up being a lot, very unhealthy. And then it's our relationships that end up suffering because of it as well. And it's a cycle. It is a vicious cycle that continues to happen every single day.
Very well said. Thank you, Lamar. What are your thoughts about the beauty and then the sharp edges of resilience within the Black community?
You framed that beautifully, sir. I couldn't have said it no better way. That was beautiful.
Right.
Sharp edges and the beauty of it. So real quick, I'm gonna go the opposite way.
Okay.
So one of the, as far as the sharp edges, something that I do a lot of training on resilience and stuff with different organizations, community-based organizations. And one of the things, so I was at a mixer for an organization I do some work with, and a lady asked, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh yeah, I train on different soft skills and resilience." And she said, "Oh man, I really feel like since the pandemic, companies are weaponizing resilience." And I said, "Weaponizing resilience?
Wow.
I never heard that term. Never heard
It's
it
the
put
first
that
time
way."
I've heard it.
Yeah, she said, "I feel like they just want us to bounce back to get back to work and not to bounce back to get better."
I see.
I said, And so listening to what Dr. Ramsey said and thinking about the question, that's something that I have become more aware of, is that use your resilience, as a resource. Like you said, it's innate, it's natural, it's something that we have. And it can be built upon, as Dr. Ramsey already knows. There are things we can do to develop and enhance that. But we don't want to rely on it, right? And I think that's the delineation we need to continue to make. And I think that so the beauty of resilience is that once you're made aware, then you can resource it whenever you need it.
Gotcha.
I'm going through a difficult time. Okay, you know what? I've been through some tough times before. I've made it through. This isn't optimal, but I'm gonna figure it out. That's resourcing it. Relying on it is like Dr. Ramsey saying, back in the day, my granddad just said, "Don't let your car run on fumes." That's how I look at it. You're running on fumes. You're just showing up. You're not necessarily present. You're not necessarily there, but you keep showing up. You keep showing up. You keep showing up. And there's positivity in that. Also, are you showing up as the best representation of yourself, as your whole self, as your authentic self? So I would say the beauty of it is, yes, you need it. It's there. It is innate in you. It's something that the Creator bestowed upon you before you got here. You're gonna be able to bounce back from life's challenges because life presents those. However, the other side of that is, we don't want to weaponize it or rely on it and not use it as the resource that it is, but just as the way to keep going. And like my granddaddy would say, running on fumes.
Thank you so much, Lamar. That was very interesting, and Dr. Ramsey talked about resilience, within Black folks. It's something that we can use, a resource to use that term. But now there's another side where it promotes unhealthy behaviors. And what is really scary was I just heard from you, now some of our employers are discovering we are vulnerable to some of these perceptions that are out there and using that against us to work even harder when you are unhappy, when you are grieving, and when you really need time off. We need a body in that seat. And you can't take time off. And then some of us feel obligated to meet those needs. That is scary. That's the first time I heard about that. Thank you for sharing that, Lamar. So Marius, we just talked about resilience in the Black community, what it looks like. It's a great resource because I know people who are not resilient, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are seeing what I see with some Black folks being resilient, but there is a limitation to it, and we need to recognize those boundaries to it and take better care of ourselves. So now I want to talk about self-care, Marius, and help us within the Black community to discover what self-care looks like. And I want to just share with you a quick little story. I used to watch the TV show on HBO, Insecure, and years ago, and
Self-care Sundays.
yeah, that's it. I can't think of the name. Healthcare Sundays.
Self-care Sundays.
Self-care Sundays.
Mhm.
And the characters to go out hiking, take care of themselves, and they designated that day, and they were committed to it and intentional with it. And I remember asking myself, wow, do other Black folks do that? Because I hadn't heard of that, and particularly with Black men in particular. So that's how I believe a lot of Black folks were introduced to self-care through a TV show, because it sparked some conversations that I had with some other folks. But Marius, I want you to start off with this on this discussion. Tell us, what is self-care and what might it look like?
Well, self-care is something that is unique to you that can promote holistic wellness. That can be anything from meditating to going to your doctor's appointment. When I teach self-care, I like to start with what someone is already doing, because a lot of times, especially with Black people, we already have things that we're doing. We don't realize that they're self-care methods, though. Some people may enjoy doing makeup tutorials online. Some people may like taking their dog for a walk and take the scenic route instead of the short way back. They think they're just walking their dog, but they're actually engaging in self-care, physical exercise, getting fresh air, which we all know resets the respiratory and the nervous system and all of that. I like to start with what people are already doing and build around that. And if there's nothing, which sometimes there's nothing there because they're either debilitated, decompensated or what have you, start small. What is something that can make you feel better? Just start there.
Mm.
If that's, taking a nap and you may be depressed and sleeping too much, let's bring that down to a 30-minute nap every 6 hours or something instead of sleeping through the whole day. Or let's bring the video game play down to an hour a day instead of all day.
Gotcha.
Basically turning what your hobbies are into self-care skills. That's where I like to start. And then we build from that and develop and explore new things from there.
Thank you so much. And Kiki, tell us about self-care and Black women in particular, because I really enjoy watching that on the TV show Insecure, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. Are Black, this may be an unfair question, are Black women better at self-care than Black men? And then you can elaborate on self-care.
Probably, but we're probably better, but just because I think a lot of Black women think self-care is like getting your nails done and get your hair done, right? Like they feel like that's self-care. But I agree with Marius, is that thing that makes you feel better about your whole wellness of yourself. And so like for me, I used to think that self-care was getting my nails done and getting my hair done till I started working during those sessions. Right? Like I take my laptop, to get my hair done. So that ain't no self-care to me. Like, and I'm on my phone potentially when I'm getting a mani and a pedi, right? And so I think self-care is the thing that you're doing for yourself, and you don't have to have anything else going on while you're doing that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my self-care practices is I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm part of the 5 a.m. club. And that is my time when everybody else in the house is asleep, the kids is not awake. Don't, you know what I'm saying? I get a chance to just be with my own thoughts and pray and meditate and write and, you know, journal and all those things. That inherently is self-care. And I also think that we have to take those breaks. I'm going to Puerto Rico tomorrow. Hello, somebody. And this is a whole girls trip that I'm going
Look
on
at that.
because my brain be working. You know, she be working too much. And I realized over these past couple of years that I don't have the kind of stamina that I used to have. And so I need to then recoup for that by taking a break. And so I think that women, we still have trouble taking the break because we feel so responsible for the other things that are going on in our lives. Like, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I'm blessed to have a husband who is like, you do you, get your self-care, because I can
The
take care of the
priority.
kids. And you know, like I love that about him, because if I didn't have that support, right, then I wouldn't be able to do the things that are necessary for me to recoup. And I think it was Lamar, you said how your cup run dry, like you're running on fumes, right? How are we to give? Like, we are all givers, especially I know black people to be so giving and caring.
Yes.
How are we to give when we running on fumes? We empty. Like, I ain't got nothing to give you, but we still be giving or trying to give on fumes. And we wonder why we get sick. Like, wow, my body tells me all the time when I'm running on fumes, either I just feel totally exhausted, I have no energy, and I get sick. I get a cold or something like that, and I'm out. Because that was my body saying, sis, you're doing too much. And so I love and I practice a lot of self-care nowadays because I know that I can't survive without it.
So what's the benefit for particularly Black women, Kiki, for practicing self-care? What's the benefit?
You know what? It is a holistic benefit in terms of our health and our mental capacity, right? Black women are nurturers, right? We are nurturers. Like, that is part of what we do and how we were built. And so in order to be nurturers, we have to be able to give ourselves what we need to be that for other people. And I can know, like, for me, if I'm not getting what I need, sometimes I'm brass, I'm angry, you know, I move a little too fast, right? I may be yelling at my kids, and none of those things are who I am or who I want to be to the people who I love, right? So the benefit is we give ourselves and our loved ones the best of ourselves when we're able to practice that self-care, and we are able to give ourselves the best of ourselves. I mean, I think that for Black women, and I know this is true for Black men as well, but I'm speaking particularly for Black women, we are very hard on ourselves. We beat ourselves up a whole lot about some things that are real small sometimes, but we do that. And a lot of times we're not able to recover and give ourselves a little grace and mercy for being human. And so in order to be better to ourselves, we need to learn that self-care is a necessary. It's not something that we just want to do. It's a must.
Yes, not an option. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for those important, encouraging words. Lamar Lewis, tell us about the brothers and Black men and self-care.
Man, it's gonna be so funny. A lot of what they said, but a lot definitely what Dr. Ramsey said. I'm gonna circle and just you say it in a different way.
Sure.
So that means we in alignment, which I know that this people gonna get what they need from. So I'm grateful. But yeah, man, a lot of stuff. Oh, sorry.
Peachtree Building, 4th floor.
Can y'all hear that in the background?
Yeah, that's okay.
I apologize. Okay, cool. Primarily, Black men don't engage in self-care. Now, they may go to the barbershop or things like that. But when it comes to actual self-care in the way we're describing it, it's not a big thing that I've seen. However, what I have taken the charge to do is help create spaces for brothers just to come together. And I find that even to get a chance to come together, just talk about what my wife is doing, what my baby mama doing, what my kids is doing, what my job is doing, just get a chance to have those spaces, it's therapeutic for them. So they may not necessarily go into therapy, but they're willing to get with a bunch of guys and just talk and share their experiences and share their wisdom.
Have a
And
healthy
I find
outlet.
that is a excellent segue into, you know what, some of the deeper stuff like we've been talking about throughout our time together today. You may need to talk to somebody more professionally about that, but just some of the more surface level, man, my job stressed me out, my wife stressed me out, or my kids or whatever. These spaces are created to have that. We're creating more spaces for that. So when it comes to self-care, briefly, I think of self-compassion, I think of self-awareness, self-reflection, and then sleep. You can't
Sleep.
take, if you don't sleep, like there, I mean, science, I tell people all the time, don't believe me, Google it. Go find their information from reputable sources. If you're not sleeping, you're not going to be able to do anything for a sustained period of time. You have to sleep, right? But you have to do that, like Doc just said, when you're aware. I know what I need. I know I need to sleep. I know I need to eat. I know I need to get away from people right now because I'm not in the best mood or whatever the case may be. So when you're develop that self-awareness through self-reflection, that time you mentioned, I'm not doing the 5 a.m. club no more. However, I do create intentional time throughout my day to just be in the process and think in my own thoughts. A lot of times, like Maria said, it is exercise, going out in nature, walking my dog, whatever the case may be.
Yep.
But you need that time to yourself. And lastly, when I think about self-compassion, I think about, and Dr. Kristen Neff is like the leading person in relation to that. But I think about treating yourself like you would treat your friend. And many of us, I use Mars as an example because he is an actual friend of mine. If he called me with the problem, I wouldn't tell him, you sound crazy. You sound stupid, man. You better suck it up and deal with it. Man, what's wrong with you? I wouldn't do that to him. I'd be like, bro, what's going on? Let's figure this out. How can I help? But we don't turn that towards ourselves. Turn that same compassion I would have towards my friend, towards myself. And I think that to me are the foundational pieces of self-care. Because if you don't reflect, you got aware that you need to take care of yourself. You ain't sleeping. You can't be compassionate to yourself. Thus, like Dr. Ramsey said, you can't be compassionate to other people.
Absolutely. And so what are the we just mentioned some of the benefits of self-care for Black men. But what are some ultimate issues that can happen if we fail to practice some adequate self-care?
From my vantage point, brother, I will speak for Black men.
Okay.
I see Black men every day striving, trying. I see Black men dropping their kids off to school, picking them up. I see Black men as coaches and big brothers and big homies to other people's kids. And if we as Black men don't take care of ourselves, we studies show it. I'm not making nothing up. We check out earlier than a lot of people. Most other, groups of men in the country, most other groups of people in the country, Black men at the lowest when it comes to social determinants of health, the different outcomes that we have, we're at the bottom of. So if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't be here for those who need us long term.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's a shock. Oh, such just had a heart attack. So just got cancer. You already at stage 4.
Yeah.
So just got this. We don't go to the doctor. All these type of things that happen and more. Then we leave our families without the patriarch, without somebody to be there in that role because we're so busy worried about, I got to get it. Boom, you drop dead at 40. Or something I'll see, and I'll say this briefly, Black men are increasing dying by suicide, right? So
Yes.
that's another way of not being here. Excessive substance use. I mean, there's so many, bad outcomes that could come from, negative outcomes that could come from not taking care of yourself as a person in general, but specifically as a Black man.
Thank you so much. We need to overcome that mindset, press on, until you die, is a theme that I'm hearing today. And I am so grateful to have this discussion with you three. You have enlightened me on some of these issues. So I want to close it out just by asking a question, and start with you, Marius. What are some quick tips? You mentioned some earlier, but what do you do for self-care? How do you take care of you?
Something that hasn't been happening lately because it's winter time, and that's a whole nother thing, seasonal affective disorder. But getting outside, I have to get sunlight. When the weather permits, it does wonders. As we know, it promotes and creates the vitamin D flow, the the melatonin, the melanin, everything is activated. It helps with the blood, it helps with the respiratory, it helps with the skin, it helps with everything. So when I'm out in that, I'm able to really, it just feels better.
Gotcha.
So if I do my exercise, I may go outside to do it instead of the gym. I like to meditate. I like to take time away from the devices. That's really important. Turning everything off and just being self-aware. I believe someone said that before. Just being in the quiet, just
Yeah.
being able to hear your own thoughts, being able to hear everything that's going on just with you. And I also engage in other hobbies, whether it be singing or writing, journaling. I have a business that I try to devote energy to without burning out. Just things that I enjoy doing, like I said, about, promoting that to the clients.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ramsey, I know you mentioned about your girls' trip you're going to go on, and you're a member of
Yeah,
the 5 a.m. club. I heard that for the first
yeah.
time. Can you give the
Yeah.
audience just a quick nugget about something else that they can possibly do to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I'm a huge workout fanatic. I have Peloton tread and Peloton bike. So Kiki, do you love me if you own Peloton? Um, and so I ran track throughout high school and college, and so I do a lot of running. I do a lot of 5Ks, half marathons. I love the spa day. I get massages on a regular. Date night with my hubby, because I feel like, nurturing relationships for me, that is self-care. I try to take a day off a month, right? Like I try to take that at least one day off a month. I mean, I think we can do that. Like I know some people who have so much time that roll over. Why do y'all got time that roll over? Or time that you can sell or give to other people? Like that is amazing to me that we don't even take the time that's given to us that we work for. And so I take a day off a week. And then also church on the weekends for me is another time for me to get
Hallelujah.
that spiritual feeding that I need in order to put that armor on to face all the stuff that we got to face during the week. And so those are my self-care tips.
Thank you so much. Lamar, any final words about self-care tips or strategies that you use or you get encouraged?
Yes, sir. I would be very quick. Move on purpose. Move on purpose. I just made that up just now.
All right.
Everything I do when it comes to
Love
myself, whether it comes physical, I will pat that, but y'all can use it because y'all like y'all a lot. I'm just playing. I do exercise a lot. I make intentional decisions now, especially about my boundaries, who I interact with at certain times. Like right now, I don't interact with certain people because they take and don't give back. From emotionally gratitude, I just try to stay grateful. Even every time I just take a breath, I try to stay grateful, and I nurture that through my spiritual development. I pray and meditate. When I pray, I'm talking to God. When I meditate, I'm listening to God. That's my belief. So I try to move on purpose holistically, to take care of my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And I notice, like Doctor said, and I'll end with this, I can tell when something's out of whack if I'm focused on one part of myself and not another. I can just tell. So I just try to be aware. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just being aware of what I need and giving myself that in the moment. If I can't give it to myself in the moment, give myself grace to know I'll get it at some point.
All right. Thank you so much. And I also just want to mention something that I've done, ever since the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, January 6th. I think it was 2021. I stopped watching news. That has helped me tremendously. I used to be a news junkie. It's like I got to know everything, especially during political seasons. I don't need to know. I can pull it up on my phone. I can read the headlines. And something else that I've learned to do, I think you talked about this, Mari, is just being present with yourself. When I drive to work, it's an hour and 15-minute drive. I turn off the music. I stop listening to podcasts, and I sit there in traffic in silence and decompress. That is my form of meditation. I almost said medication. It feels like it. That's my form of meditation. So I'm just gonna let you guys know who are listening, it can be easy. It doesn't require a lot of setup and time and strategizing. It's just when you have the time, take that time for you. So I want to thank our guests for joining us, Marius Hayes, Dr. Kiki Ramsey, and Lamar Lewis, for sharing some of your thoughts and clinical opinions about Black resilience and self-care. This has been wonderful. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Again, I am Dr. Harrison Davis, the Chief Diversity Officer at Life University. This is part of our programming for Black History Month. Please look out for other programs that we have throughout the rest of the month. We are here to educate you and motivate you to be your best version of you. Thank you, guys, and I hope to see you soon.